Welcome back, amazing listeners of the Hopeful Majority. How you doing? I'm back with you today on a solo episode for all the amazing new people joining. Just so you know, we alternate. One week we do a fascinating interview or conversation. Then the following week we do a solo conversation like this. Last week we had on Batya Ungar Sargon, who discussed what it means to be an advocate of President Trump's economic policies. I thought it was a fascinating conversation, especially in the wake of the assassination attempt. Today's conversation is about what it means to take a deep breath in our politics. What is the importance of taking a step back, especially during a crazy news cycle? Because I don't know where you've been, but I've been just absolutely hit upside the head on the right, the left, all over the place with what's been going on. I mean, 12 days ago, we had an assassination attempt on President Donald Trump's life. A week ago, we had President Biden's drop out of the Democratic race for president. We've just had Vice President Kamala Harris now say that she's going to be running for presidential nomination on the Democratic side. She seems to be the likely nominee. And the fact is, that no one knows what the future is going to look like. No one knows what November 4th is going to look like. And yet we live at this moment where you hear the most ardent takes on both the left and the right with absolute certainty. And so what I want to talk to you about today is the value and the importance of taking a step back, because at these moments when we act with extreme speed instead of decisive decision making, when we act without a sense of curiosity, when we act without actually taking a step back and understanding the complexity of the moment, I think we only further drive our polarization. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're not on Spotify or Apple and you're watching this, you see me in a hotel room. This is actually one day before our Bridge USA annual student summit, where we bring together all these young people from across the country, the left, the right, center, you name it, blue, green, purple, I don't care, all across the political spectrum, to figure out how we bridge our differences in this country and actually create a new path forward. And if you sense me being a little excited, a little jumpy, a little hopeful in a moment that seems kind of crazy, it's because all the stuff that's happening out there, one thing I can be certain of is that the next generation is going to change the face of our politics. So with that, let's get into the episode and the importance of taking a step back and taking a deep breath. I'll catch you right into the monologue. As I started this conversation with, 12 days ago, we had the tragic assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. Then we had the RNC. Then we had President Biden announce that he will no longer be seeking the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party. Now we've had President Biden endorse Kamala Harris, who is now running for president on the Democratic side. That was about 4 days ago. I want to timestamp this. This episode is being recorded on July 25th because you never know. The news is crazy. Things are happening. Things are changing. So a lot's going on. What's happening? I mean, we've probably lived through, since the presidential debate, the 4 to 5 most tumultuous weeks in American presidential election history. I can't imagine a more crazy time. I mean, you could think about 1968. The parallels are significant. And by the way, I'm in Chicago right now prepping for the Bridge USA Summit. So it is a crazy time. It is a crazy moment. And I give you all of that context because when I go online and I listen to some of my favorite podcasts and my favorite shows, my talk show hosts, the pundits, the influencers, you go on social media, you go on TikTok. I mean, you see takes, perspectives, ideas, whether they relate to the assassination attempt on President Trump, whether they relate to what's going to happen with Kamala Harris, and whether they relate to what's going to happen on November 4th during the election cycle. I mean, the certainty with which people are showing up to the public square, whether it's on X or Instagram or TikTok or on their podcasts, is crazy to me. Because how could you possibly be certain about what you think at this moment, given all of that is changing? And I specifically mean this in the context of what's going to happen on election day. I think it's important for people to take a step back and just reflect on where we are as a country. I think we as citizens right now are in the trenches. We're all in the trenches. And we're heavily hit by news information, by the media, by so many different information sources. And we're all being forced to make our opinions and decisions on who's going to be president, who do I vote for. And I think that it's important at this time to say, hold on for a second. We just had the 4 craziest weeks in American politics that we can think of, certainly in my lifetime, definitely in my lifetime. And I think it's valuable to say, I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to look like. I might have very strong beliefs on different issues. I might believe that certain candidates deliver certain values on issues. Let's say you're somebody on the Democratic side or on the left or the liberal side of the political spectrum, and you deeply believe in the need for a pro-choice abortion policy. You say, "Hey, Kamala Harris is my pick." You might be on the right. You deeply believe in the decline of American primacy across the world. You think that the deep state has deeply corrupted our political institutions and is favoring the elite. You might say, "Hey, I'm for President Trump." I get that. But what I want us to challenge ourselves at this moment is to take a bigger step back and say, well, we're living at this crazy political moment and we're trying to understand what the next 10, 20, 30 years of the United States is going to look like. Because I think that all of us across the country are on the side of democracy. I really believe that. Most people. You might say, hey, the person that disagrees with me that votes for President Trump, the person that disagrees with me is going to vote for Kamala Harris. They're certainly not for the side of democracy. But I will say this, having traveled the country, met thousands of people as somebody that's leading this Bridge USA Summit that's happening right now, where I talk to students across the country and hear their perspectives, I think that most people, and you can go back to previous episodes of the show, understand that the American experiment requires us to have a deep faith of sense of each other because most of us here in this country understand and recognize what we have. The problem is that we all talk in different language. And so because we show up in the public square, different language, different viewpoints, different points on the political spectrum, and there's zero space to actually have a nuanced conversation, people assume and make assumptions about each other. But I think broadly across the board, if you asked me, I think that most Americans want America to succeed. Now, you might disagree with what America means to that person, what success looks like, but we all want it to succeed. So if everybody has some sort of desire or belief in success of this country, of this experiment, then the question becomes, well, what can we do at this moment to ensure that the United States not only continues into the future but thrives? How do we lay that foundation for success? And the reason why I would advocate for all of us at this time to take a moment to step back, to take a moment to just reduce our consumption of news for a little bit and reflect, think about what we value, what our principles are. I think it would be really valuable because I think in moments of deep uncertainty, of deep tumult, of significant challenge to the status quo, the people that are trying to most polarize and divide our society thrive in that environment because they're able to exploit people's fear. They're able to exploit people's uncertainty. The conflict entrepreneurs are able to prey on our ability to sell out each other because they know that it's easier for us to fall into a cycle of hate than it is to fall into a cycle of empathy for the other, right? They understand that. And because they understand that, they are going to exploit this moment. And I think, and you may or may not have heard this phrase. If you're a listener to the show, you know this phrase. You know where I'm going. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Because the phrase that I love to utilize at this moment is the outrage industrial complex. It's this idea that at this moment, outrage sells. It motivates people. You make money by being outrageous. You gain influence online by being outrageous. Outrageous takes are what give you social credibility. No one wants anything to do with nuance. Heck, say nuance sounds like you're trying to sell broccoli to the American people, right? And so in this environment, where the outrage model sells, people are ready to prey on your uncertainty, on the moment. When I think what we need to be doing is consuming information productively, trying to educate ourselves, trying to inform, trying to listen to many different perspectives. What's going to happen is that people are going to prey on each other's worst instincts. And to win this election cycle, both sides are going to be at a race to the bottom. And you might firmly say, I want my side to win because this is such an existential moment. But what I would tell you is that do we want to sacrifice what we are trying to avoid in the process of trying to find that thing? Let me rephrase that. Do we want to sacrifice who we are and what we believe in the process of fighting what we desperately want to avoid? We cannot become what we fear. And I think when everybody at this moment is telling us to hate the other side, to critique the other side, to give up on your fellow Americans, when that is the dominating operating mode of society, when that is what we're operating for, I think that it is the most courageous thing to say no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment to be curious. I'm going to take a moment to listen to the other side. I'm going to take a moment to not feed into the outrage model, but to feed into nuance, because I think that's the only way we solve our problems. And I can already hear somebody saying, "Oh man, that sounds so naive. You sound so naive." I can already hear somebody saying, "You want me to be curious? I've been curious for the last 8 years and I've got my opinion." Okay, fine. You got your opinion. Why would it hurt for you to take a moment to understand the other person's opinion? It's not going to change your mind. No, it's probably not going to change your vote. But what I think it does is it gives us the possibility to understand the other. The idea behind, I think, trying to bridge our differences at this moment is not to change each other's minds. It's not to strive for some fake unity. It's to lay the foundation for healthy conflict. It's to start trying to understand, if I try to actually understand why the person I disagree with disagrees with me, I can at least understand where they're coming from. And when I can understand where somebody else is coming from, my immediate urgency isn't to label them as evil. It's instead to say, I understand why. Now, here's my argument. And when you can couch our opinions, our thoughts in that context, I think it's transformative. And so, as it relates to this moment, I think by taking a step back, we lay the foundation for more prosperity in the future, because we are more equipped to be able to handle all this incoming information. I can already see the polls coming out. I can see political pundits saying, this is what's going to happen in November. That's what's going to happen in November. Well, they're all lying. Nobody knows what's going to happen. You might have a hunch. I've got a hunch. I've got an opinion. But instead of trying to feed into the urgency of the moment and the craze of the moment, I think that we need to rather feed and nourish the curiosity part of our souls. Because there's a ton of red meat out there to fight after. And there's very little of healthy discussion at a time when our country desperately needs that. And so, to all those that are new and joining, that have stayed this long through this episode, because I know that there's been a lot of other conversations and new people have come and found us, I appreciate you joining us, because every week we either have conversations like this where you and I are talking to each other about a concept, or we have on an amazing and fascinating guest. And by the way, as I said in the introduction, I'm recording this right before our national summit, and stay tuned, because I think the next episode, or the episode after that, is actually going to feature some students and some amazing young people I work with, because they have outlined and demonstrated to me what is possible. I think it's important to reinvest our capacity and hope in actually understanding what is possible, because I think the cynicism right now that is prevalent in our society, which is understandable, it makes sense. Trust me, I try to fight it on a daily basis. That cynicism, I think, is really ultimately the final nail in the coffin. We got to fight that back. We got to fight back apathy. So I'm going to bring you some of those amazing young people. Remember, every week, every Monday, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your content, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're there. Please leave a like or subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review. It really, really helps. We're building this hopeful majority together. Remember, this isn't about fake unity. It's about healthy conflict. It's about trying to disagree better. It's trying to understand that we all, as citizens, owe it to each other. As Americans, owe it to each other to give each other the chance to be better. Because ultimately, that's what this is all about. I'll catch you next week.